Morning, everyone, and welcome to the Microsoft M365 Roundtable. Just before I kick off, can everyone hear me? Just pull a quick IM in the window. We don't need 20 people talking at once or anything like that, but just pull a quick IM. Make sure people can hear me. If you can't, also pull in an IM. Good stuff. Seeing a couple of you guys saying yes, so that's all good. Very good start to the day when the audio is definitely working. So today we're doing a Microsoft 365 roundtable. So it's more of a virtual session, and what we really wanted to do is make it a lot more different to a traditional webinar. Obviously, the session is 90 minutes long, and a 90-minute webinar can really take its toll on most of you. So I want today to be as interactive as possible. So please do ask a lot of questions in the IM window. I will stop intermittently to look through some of these questions, and I'll effectively use those questions to drive the session forward. So I don't want it to be just structured on slides and me talking throughout the whole session on the content that I have, but I more want to see what you guys want to know, and then structure it around that, if that makes sense. So as an agenda, obviously putting at least some structure to this session, I'll do a quick introduction of myself. We'll go through some session housekeeping, so the do's and don'ts of this session. Really straightforward stuff. I don't want to put too many rules in place or be the police, but definitely have to caveat some certain things. And then in the session, going to start off, and I know this is a bit of a shocker for most of you, going to start off with licensing and get the boring stuff out of the way first. So just going to touch on CSP. We're then going to go through the Microsoft M365, what it is, what it isn't. It is, again, a little bit more licensing, but just to clarify a couple of points that a lot of people normally get hung up on. We'll then start to look through the actual components of M365. So we'll touch on Office 365. Hopefully everyone is fairly familiar with Office 365, so I shouldn't have to spend half the session talking about what it is and what it can do. Although then again, if not many people know about it, more than happy to talk through it. Again, this is going to be more audience-led. We're then going to do a bit of a security overview. So look at what are the important points of security, what are most businesses doing, and what most businesses are looking at. We can also look at the shared responsibility model, which again is a model that's I'd say relatively new, and a number of people are still quite unfamiliar with. So going to clarify a couple of points around that. Then I'm going to go into the EM+S component, so another component of M365, and this will align more to the security side. So hopefully it will give that session flow. We'll then look at some complementary vendors and products. This is outside of Microsoft, so we'll look at different products that can complement rather than conflict or compete against Microsoft. And finally, we'll touch on what workshops are available. So Bytes offers a myriad of different workshops. We have the M365 workshop, the Office 365 workshop, which are deep dive sessions with our Office 365 architects to understand if Office 365 and or M365 is a good fit for your business, and the solution ticks all the boxes. Likewise, we also have a cloud security workshop in which an individual such as myself will come on site and go through lots of different, go through your requirements as a business, and align these to specific solutions and vendors. This effectively gives you a nice roadmap and business plan to take back to your business to understand which security areas and which security products you need to focus on. Now, I wanted to highlight just here in terms of the workshops that these are a one-to-one session, and they are very valuable. I do have a couple of slides on the workshop towards the end of the session. However, as I understand it, and this is not a hint to anyone or anything like that, I don't think all of you are going to be able to survive for me talking for 90 minutes. So if you are interested in the workshops or are interested in that little 30-second pitch that I just did, then please do reach out to Bytes or your aligned account manager, and they'll be more than happy to send some information your way. Again, there are some slides towards the end, but for those of you that need to bounce off, ask some emails, or just want to get an early lunch, then please do reach out to us. that was probably the longest introduction that longest agenda that I've ever done, to be fairly honest, but hopefully it covers some of the key points. Anyway, maybe the first thing that I should have done before that is actually introduce myself. So the person that's speaking now, my name is Janelle. Yes, it's an Italian name. And no, I do not speak a word of Italian. It's embarrassing. A lot of people actually give me stick for it. Anyway, I work at Byte Software Services as one of the cloud solution specialists and cloud security specialists. So I sit as a overlay resource to a lot of our account managers, and I provide support and an element of pre-sales to all of our customers, whether they be new or existing. I'm very consultative and solution driven, so I don't favor Microsoft more than I favor something like Sophos or CrowdStrike. I will take a consultative and agnostic view on everything. Which is quite nice, because then I get to draw up the high-level solution of multiple products, because let's face it, we're not always going to have one product that rules them all, or else that would be too easy. Following this session, or even if you have to drop out halfway, if you do need to contact me in terms of getting more information about the workshops, or if you have any questions as a follow-up to today's session, please do email me. It won't go into a folder and get lost into the never in Outlook. I will respond, or at least try and respond, although I'm normally quite busy most of the time. I will make time to obviously respond. You can also find further contact details for Bytes at bytes.co.uk. Likewise, I also have my own website, which I do blog in, and different articles. Most of them are about trying to get free Wi-Fi by hacking into people's access points. Caveat in that obviously that has nothing to do with Bytes, and it's just a little hobby of mine that I do to further my security skills. So community matters, please do check them out. Likewise, please do feel free to run a search for me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure I'm the only Gennaro Miaccio that works at Bytes, so it shouldn't be too hard to find me. A couple of housekeeping rules before we kick off on the main session. So do feel free to take yourself off of mute and ask questions at any point. Likewise, if you want to use IMs to communicate your questions across, that's fine. I suppose, given the fact that there's almost 30 of us in the meeting, maybe we will go for the IM route more than the actual. Or please raise your hand, and then I can pause the session and you guys can take yourselves off of mute. But please, don't let this discourage you. Please do ask questions. I want this to be more audience-led. I know that I've got a little bit of a structure to the session, but I really want you guys to lead it. Please do ask me questions. I'd prefer to be bombarded with questions and understand what your guys' needs and requirements are, what you want to see, what areas you're unfamiliar with, and then I can kind of retailer the session towards that. Don't get me wrong, might not be able to answer every single question, so ones that I don't answer or don't have time to answer or just simply lack the knowledge to answer, I will take them offline and I will respond to to the group on the group today. There will be a couple of poll questions. This is just to keep things a little bit interesting. Obviously motivate you guys to click a couple of buttons and have your input. There's only about 3 or 4 questions, nothing too serious, although I may ask other questions and just type your answers in the IM window. We obviously can't account for every single question. That would be a complete nightmare. But yeah, there will be a couple of poll questions, so please do take part as much as you can. It will help me structure the session in terms of where to spend more time on and less time on. Again, can't emphasize this enough. It's an open session. Slides are for structured only. Very audience-led approach. Don't be a fly on the wall. Don't just sit there. Please do get involved. Please IM. Please raise your hand. Please ask questions. I want to make this session more than just a webinar. I want you guys involved. Awesome. So that's our housekeeping out the way. I hopefully have covered every single point. I have marketing nodding. Yep, I have covered every single point. That is awesome. So let's kick right off into M365. And I suppose before I go into M365, actually, I'm going to launch a poll question right now to you guys. And while Amy is doing that, I am just going to grab a quick drink of coffee. I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to respond with that. So we've got some good participation on that. Seems like it's almost a fair split of 50% not using M365 and, oh wait, I think we Amy may have put that up on screen. I don't know if you guys can still see my screen. Ah, awesome. So about 50% of you guys are not using and about 40% are using M365 and 9% would like to trial. It's good that 0% of you actually answered what is it. That's quite good. So what I'll do with the the M365 element is I'll run through it in high level. I understand that a number of you are using it. For the ones that are using it, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that you probably haven't turned on every feature. So that's so hopefully you will still find some value of this session in terms of the features that you already have. Anyway, in terms of M365, M365 comprises of 3 different features. And this is Office 365, which we all know and love. This is the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite. This adds an additional layer of security onto our Office 365 environment, but also extends to different SaaS applications and in some cases onto our on-premise applications. We also then have Windows 10 Enterprise, which of course we all know Windows 10, and this is just the effective version upgrade or edition upgrade from Professional to Enterprise. All of this is on a per user licensing model, so this is a suite of products. As we hold on, sorry, it's not going to the next slide. Drilling down a little bit further into M365, you can see the different functionality of each of the components have. Now, bear in mind what's listed here is the components for M365 E3, and this is where a lot of people get confused because you have Microsoft 365 E3, Microsoft 365 E5, and then you have Office 365 E3, and then Office 365 E1 and E5, and then EM+S E3 and E5. So Microsoft seem to have this habit of naming things very similar, and it definitely promotes confusion. But for the purposes of this, the slide that we got up at the at the moment is for M365 E3, and this contains the elements from Office 365 E3, E3 with Enterprise Mobility and Security, and Windows 10 Enterprise. So, and we will go through the Office 365 elements in a little bit more detail on the next slides, but the E3 license contains things like your Exchange Online, your SharePoint Online, your Skype for Business Online. It also comes with things like Sway, Yammer. You also get entitlements for Office Pro Plus. So this is the full fat application entitlements for your users' machines. I have a question that's come in. What does the E in E3 stand for? I believe it stands for Enterprise. I'm definitely going to think Enterprise. I've also got another question come through. Is there anything that it doesn't give you compared to E5? That's a very good question. I believe the next slide actually is a bit of a comparison in terms of E3 and E5. So let me go through that slide. If you have the same question, then we can revert back around and take a further look at that. We then have the EM+S E3. Another question is advanced threat protection included. Advanced threat protection is only in the E5 variant. That's for the Office 365 ATP. You also have ATP in things like Azure and Windows Defender, which, well, the Azure one is completely separate to this, so we'll leave that one out. But the one for Windows 10 would be in the E5 license. So most of the time when you hear the word ATP, it is generally in the E5 suite of products. There have been some rumors that Microsoft will be moving some of the ATP features to E3, but I can't confirm this as I don't actually have anything in writing. So ATP is E5, and hopefully on the next slide, it will detail that so it can illustrate it to you guys a little bit more. So we've covered the 365 element. We've got the EM+S element, the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite. So in the E3 package, we get Azure Active Directory Premium 1. So this gives you your things like your single sign-on, your multi-factor authentication, your conditional access. You then have Microsoft Intune. This is your mobile device management, your mobile application management. This is also your light configuration and management of desktops and laptop devices. Wouldn't exactly call it a full replacement to something like SCCM, System Center Config Manager, but it would more be used for patch management, so almost like a replacement to WSUS, and it has similar functionality of group policies. So it can manage the policies of a machine, it can manage the applications of a machine, and it can manage the Windows updates of a machine all from the cloud. Maybe I went into that one a little bit too much detail, but just thought I'd get that one clear with Intune, as there's always a bit of a misconception there. We then have Azure Information Protection, which this is more around document classification and protection of the actual data or files. And then we have Microsoft ATA. So Microsoft ATA is quite an interesting one. It's a on-premise type solution in the E3 license. Again, this is, of course, where it comes confusing. But the ATA piece, you stand this up as a server. You do a port mirror from your domain controllers, and it basically looks for suspicious authentication requests. It'll basically say, oh, you know what, Gennaro, he accesses this file share every day, and that's all good. But on one of the days, Gennaro is trying loads of different credential attempts on the HR file share. You know, that's a bit suspicious. So let's check that out. So it is that kind of user entity and behavior analytics. It can also look for recon-based attacks. It can also look for things like exploits such as pass the hash and using golden tickets on Kerberos. So it does have that kind of functionality, but it really only covers the user identity piece. And again, it is only a on-premise solution. Finally, we have the Windows 10 Enterprise piece. So this is this will give you entitlements to the Enterprise feature under Windows 10. So this is going to be the advanced security features like a credential guard and device guard. So being able to virtualize and encrypt your credentials. But it also gives you entitlements for things like the Azure AD join, which is quite a big feature, well, becoming quite a big feature now, especially with the preview release of Windows Autopilot, I think it is. So you get most of you get the Windows 10 Enterprise feature set from that. I may have covered that off a little. I may have covered off about 3/4 of my content, maybe just in that slide, because I think I've shot myself in the foot, as I don't know what I'm going to talk about on the EM+S piece. Anyway. The E3 and E5 differences. So when we look at Microsoft 365 E5, we're going to get Office 365 E5 instead. And what E5 gives us is everything from E3 coupled with advanced functionality or additional functionality. For the Office 365 piece, the main parts are going to be these three, which is your voice. So this allows the PSTN conferencing from the cloud. So it pretty much acts as a cloud PBX. And for those of you that don't know telephony that well, me included, of course, this effectively means that we can ring landline and mobile phone numbers from the cloud. we would install the Skype client. We would enable the Skype for Business service in Office 365, and from the Skype client, I can do a +44 number and dial out to someone in the UK. This means that we don't have to go down the hybrid option of having a cloud PBX on premise. So it can really remove some of the frustrations that we have with telephony within our organization. The next feature that we get is more of the analytical side. So you would get Power BI Pro. That's probably the main one, mainly because I've not really come across Delve Analytics that much before, but you would get Power BI Pro. So for those of you that are familiar with Power BI, it's a really good data analytics tool. What it can do is it can amalgamate data from different sources, SQL databases, SharePoint lists, SharePoint libraries, Excel sheets, CSV files, and it can present it in a much more, I don't want to say presentable way because then I'm using that same word twice, but it presents it in a much more richer way, a much more user-friendly way. You can then build reports and dashboards off the back of that and allow users to drill down into that data. When I normally talk to users about Power BI, I explain the story of taking data and actually turning it into useful information. And this is exactly what Power BI achieves. An example of what I use Power BI for is I collected all the logs from my car and my phone. I basically merged these logs together. So I had the GPS coordinates for my phone, and I had things like the rev count, the ODB speed, what else did I have for my car? Air intake, fuel pressure. I took all of these variables and I managed to put them into Power BI. A temperature sensor would have been the main one. And what I could do in Power BI is using the GPS coordinates and the logs for my car, I could literally build a map and it would show me where I've driven and how hot my car got when I redlined it off a traffic light because I was racing someone. I could see all of this information and it was usable information. It wasn't just looking through an Excel sheet trying to discover, oh, you know, when Gennaro hit 14,000 revs, his car was this hot. It was in a much more presentable way that I could understand it. Anyway, that was probably going into a bit more detail, but I'm a big fan of Power BI. I've had a couple of questions come in. Can you call out via Teams? So Teams does have VoIP functionality. I'm not 100% sure on the PSTN functionality of Teams. So that's a really good question. As I said, I am not an expert in telephony. I admittedly avoid it like the plague. But what I'll do is I will take that question and definitely find an answer for that, because that is quite good. I definitely know that it can do VoIP, it can do video conferencing, it has a lot of the features of general Skype, but actually having the ability to call out on, say, mobile and landline numbers, I wouldn't know 100% for sure. I've also got another question. Can you add Power BI licenses without having E5? So just to clarify, all of the suites, the Microsoft 365 suite, the Office 365 E3 suite, these are all suites of products. They are basically bundles of products together that simplify management and also save you money. So, for example, I'll go back one slide because it's a little bit more easier to kind of explain from here. Say if I was looking at Microsoft 365 E3, and say if I needed Exchange Online and Office Pro Plus, it would probably work out cheaper to go with E3 because I've taken 2 and I'll probably use 3 of the components because I've bought them in a suite, and it's what's the best way to say it? When you buy in bulk, you normally get a bit of a discount. It's the same with the suites. The more you buy, the more cost effective it gets. However, there are some occasions where I've spoken to customers and they very much like the voice functionality of E5, but they don't want to pay the price of E5, and they know that they're not going to use Power BI, so they can buy that voice, that PTSN conferencing piece as a standalone SKU, I think it's called. So in answer to your question, absolutely, you could buy an E3 license and then add in Power BI Pro. You could even take Power BI Pro by itself if you really wanted to. So Microsoft is quite flexible in the way that they bill and charge out components. what I would say is definitely evaluate it, because buying a suite can sometimes work out cost effective if you take one or two of the components, or say 50% of the components. You'll generally tend to start breaking even. I'm not a licensing guru, hence why I try to make this a bit more technical and in detail rather than licensing. However, Bytes have a really good licensing team. I mean, I can't even understand them half the time, because that's the level that they speak to. So if you do have those kind of licensing questions, or if you want to get a comparison between, using E3 layered on with an add-on versus E5, then we're more than happy to run those comparisons. Just please reach out to one of your aligned account managers, and we can definitely get that sorted out for you. We've got another question come through. Can I uplift our Office 365 E3 licenses to M365 E3s? So I'm not 100% sure on that. I would have said yes. As I said, more of a licensing question. It's a bit of a strange one, because if you wanted to uplift from Office 365 from E3 to E5, that would be a yes. I'm pretty sure Microsoft have a step-up SKU or something for that. They obviously want you to spend money. From Office 365, which is one suite, to M365, which is another suite that contains Office 365, wouldn't be 100% sure. I mean, I would go to more of the yes, because Microsoft do want you to spend more money, but let me get that validated for you, if that's all right. These are some really good questions. Definitely know what to look out for next time. Awesome. So continuing on with the M365 E5 piece. So when we look at the EM+S component with E5, the additional extras that we get is we get to step up to Azure Active Directory, the Premium 2. And what the P2 license gives us is two very distinct features. One of them is almost like identity analytics or behavioral analytics. This looks at suspicious user logins. So for example, if I logged in today at the Bytes Lever head office, sent a couple of emails, that would be great. But then all of a sudden I log in an hour later in China or Russia, it's quite impossible for me to log in, given the timeframes that I've got. So that would mean, that would be flagged as suspicious, flagged as risky, and it would lock my account, or it would send an email and a notification to one of our administrators. So it's looking under your identity. It's looking at your user's identity under a bit more of a microscope, and that's more on the Azure Active Directory Premium identity mechanism. But it definitely gives you that additional visibility of what's suspicious and what's not. Also ties in nicely with things like conditional access with the P1 license, because then you can start writing rules to say, if they are in a different location than what they're normally in, then prompt for MFA or just lock them out completely. The other side to the P2 license is, of course, the privileged identity management. So this allows you, in effect, to control administration rights on Office 365 and Azure Active Directory. It's got to the point where we don't want every single one of our administrators rocking around with global admin rights. It's dangerous, it's risky. And I'm not just talking about if an employee gets cheesed off and uses their global admin rights to wipe everything. It's more of the case of it's quite easy, or it's a fairly common attack vector to take control and breach someone's account, someone's user account. Username and password is quite a weak. It's quite a weak thing to use nowadays, so most hackers exploit this. If a hacker was to exploit one of your global administrators, they've instantly got God mode rights to do whatever they want on your tenancy. What privileged identity management does is it gives your administrators the capability to have global administration rights, but it just puts an additional layer in place to say they need to be approved, and they only get the admin rights for as long as they need them to do what they want, or they only get a specific level of access to do what they want. So for example, administrator 1 needs to reset someone's password. You don't need global admin rights for that. You might be a global admin, that might be the level you can request up to, but all you need is a password administrator. So it's starting to put that process in place to say, right, this person only needs to be a password administrator, and guess what? They only need to be a password administrator for 10 minutes max to reset that user's password. After that, revoke that admin privilege. We don't want to take away how our administrators work. We definitely want them, administrating our environment. We don't want to hinder their productivity, but at the same time, it's not in our best interests to have a lot of people with administrational rights. So that's where the privileged identity management piece comes in. The last thing on the EMS piece is the identity-driven security. So this is around Microsoft Cloud App Security, or as most people have called it, MCAS, I think is now the new acronym that's come out. So MCAS provides a layer of visibility very similar to a CASB type solution, where it will take information from the Office 365 API. It can also take information from your firewall logs, and it can actually look at what users are doing within Office 365, but also look at which users are consuming different cloud services. Because it's ingesting your firewall logs, you then have the capability to say, well, hang on, these group of users over here, which should be using OneDrive for Business, they've got entitlements to that, are in fact also using Dropbox, and it's a personal Dropbox. This could be a shadow IT and a DLP issue. So using things like MCAS really does give an organization some good visibility into what the hell our users are doing. Especially when you've got a larger organization, it's quite hard for administrators to have a magnifying glass over every single user. It's just not viable. I mean, if I look at Bytes, for example, I think we've got like 400 or 500 people in the UK, somewhere around there, and our IT team is 8 or 9 members. You can't have 8 or 9 people constantly managing or monitoring all of those users. It doesn't work. If you're going to monitor someone, it's more of a one-on-one relationship. So having something like this can definitely give you a lot more visibility, and it can do it quite quickly. I've also got another question come through. Would you only need to give your administrators the E5 license, or would every user need an E5? That's an interesting one. So I've come across this before. For the privileged identity management piece, I believe it's only you administrators that need to have the license. But if you want to have the identity analytics for all of your users, i.e., suspicious logging into Italy in 10 minutes after logging in the UK, then all users would need that E5 license, or at least the Azure Active Directory Premium 2 license. Most of the time, Microsoft do put certain caveats in place into their product use rights to say if it's a tenant-wide feature or not. So I'm not 100% sure on the privileged identity management piece, because the PIM piece is only going to be really relevant for your administrators or people that need to have access. So I would say that it is just the administrators for that, but then your users will lose out on the identity functionality. So that's that done on the EM+S E5. Would you believe it? That was only an overview. Finally, on the Windows 10 enterprise piece, so the E5 gives you access to the advanced endpoint security, and this is the Windows Defender ATP element. So when we talk about Windows Defender ATP or advanced threat protection, this is more giving Windows Defender the ability to have EDR type capability, so endpoint detection and response. The thought process behind that is as we know, every single antivirus product that's out there, your McAfee's, your Symantec's, your Sophos, whichever antivirus that you go for, your Windows Defenders even, none of them are ever going to be 100% effective, right? There's always that 1% or 0.5% chance or whatever percent chance that some kind of new malware that no one's ever heard of, or some hacker out there has found an exploit that no one's ever seen, they can get into your system. Nothing is foolproof. There is nothing. There is no such thing as a silver bullet. So we need to stop thinking about how do we prevent everything, and also start looking into. Obviously, we do want to prevent the 99.9% of stuff, but we also need to have tools and capability that allows us to investigate when a breach happens. So if you look at your current antivirus solution, whether you got McAfee, Symantec, Kaspersky, ESET, they prevent stuff, but how many of your providers will actually do something when a breach has occurred? Some of you guys might, or some of you guys might have a separate provider for that, a separate product, a separate service even. But this is more trying to tie it together. So Windows Defender ATP gives you the capability to prevent, but also the capability to investigate. It's basically saying if someone gets in, let's churn through those logs. Let's see their point of entry. Let's see if they've actually laterally moved throughout our network, and let's do something about it. Let's respond to that. Let's isolate that machine. Let's pull that machine off the network so we can reduce the damage to as minimal as possible. Anyway, that's the M365 part. I think I went into that in a lot more detail because I do actually have Office 365 and EM+S slides, but that means now I can actually quickly skip through them, which is always going to be a plus. Just want to say, guys, like the guys that are asking questions, please do keep them coming. They're really good, really really challenging me here, especially some of the licensing ones. You guys know who you are. For the ones that I didn't answer, of course, I will be, I will get back to you. I think there was one or two that wasn't answered, so apologies for that. But I will look to get those answered. But it's no, very good interaction, guys. Thank you. So next slide. So wanted to throw in a little bit about CSP. Again, this is more licensing, not an expert. I am going to skim through this quicker than the speed of light. That's the one. So I suppose just to throw out a quick question, do we have a poll question for this? No poll question for this? Yeah, just put it in the IM window or the questions window. Who's actually heard of CSP or cloud service provider, or who is under a CSP agreement? Sorry for it being open. I do not anticipate this being a question. Just going to mute myself for 2 secs while I drink half a glass of water very quickly. Right, so getting a number of responses mixed between yes and no. Some of you guys with bites already. Thank you guys very much for that. That's great. Glad to have you on here. You can spread all the good stuff for us if you can. So just to run through CSP in a very high level, as I said, I am not licensing at all. But oh, hold on, let me make my slides go next. There we go. So CSP, in a nutshell, gives it allows bytes to effectively bill out for things like Office 365, for things like Azure, for things like M365. It makes us a licensing provider that can transact this agreement on behalf of Microsoft. And what this allows us to do is it gives us some flexibility in terms of how we run these contracts. Now, a lot of you guys will probably be aware that to license most stuff with Microsoft, you would either have had to have had an MPSA, also known as previously known as an open agreement, I believe, or an EA, an enterprise agreement. I have no idea what MPLS stands for. Is it MPLS? No, maybe MPSA. Sorry, MPLS is a type of line, I think. The MPSA contracts, I have no idea what that actually stands for. But anyway, it would either have been an open agreement, an MPSA, or an EA that you would need to take out. And most of the time, these require customers to have a commitment. So you would commit to 1 or 3 years of having a set amount of licenses or a minimum amount of licenses, and you would pay that annually. Now, as we move more towards cloud services, we have seen that, well, we are billed monthly on sometimes a per user basis, or in the likes of Azure on a consumption basis. Does it make sense for us to have a 3-year agreement? Well, for some companies that have a steady user count, and want to leverage some higher discounts, absolutely. Annual billing definitely makes sense. But for other customers, small, medium businesses, more so, they want a more of a monthly billing approach. They don't want to have to put a year's worth of Office 365 up front or 3 years of Office 365 up front when anything could happen. They may have a massive user reduction, or a lot more users may come on board. So this monthly billing definitely does give you a lot more flexibility. It gives you the flexibility very similar to pay as you go on a credit card. You get the ability to increase and decrease on a month-by-month basis. But unlike paying with credit card, which obviously gives you the RRP or highest pricing available, CSP offerings do actually give you some competitive pricing. So you're basically getting the I don't want to make it sound too much like a sales pitch, but you're getting the benefits of what you would have on a credit card, that monthly flexibility, but you're also getting a reduced pricing from that of a credit card. Now, don't get me wrong, the discounts are not going to be as high as that of something like an EA when you have X amount of users. However, it's better than paying a credit card, so it's from there. The CSP agreement also allows Bytes to wrapper in our own services, and one of the services that we include is our cloud onboarding. So our onboarding team here, really good set of guys. They help our customers get up and running on Office 365, on EM+S, and on Azure quite quickly. They show you guys around the portal, help you understand, the different portals that are there, how you can do some resource management, and how you can start onboarding users. So this support and this hand-holding element is it's been a very good successful piece of Bytes, and a very good layering into the CSP offering. Worth highlighting that things like Azure, which you normally have to commit so much to on an agreement, has no upfront payment. So you basically are charged for what you used. Very similar to the credit card agreement. Just wanted to highlight that there, because Azure is obviously built differently to M365 and Office 365 to what we was talking about this morning. But that is as far as my CSP knowledge goes. I am not a licensing expert. However, as I've said, there are some really good licensing experts at Bytes. We do have a number of people that are expertise in CSP. So if you do have any questions, if you want to look at this as an option, or to do a price comparison even, please do get in touch with us. We're more than happy to help you out from that side. So Office 365, I suppose before I kick off with Office 365, I know I spent the last couple of slides talking about Office 365 in a bit more detail than I should, but just wanted to launch another poll to see how many of you guys are currently using Office 365. Just launching the poll now, so you guys should see that on your screen. So it looks like the results are in. So quite a mixture here. So about a quarter of you not using Office 365. Some of you in your trial stage. I'm going to assume the trial stage is more moving your mail online, so things like Exchange, unless some of you guys are trialing things like SharePoint. A number of you are using some features, and a good number of you are using some features. So hopefully the first bit of the presentation that I did on Office 365 did give you a good view into the E3 licenses. However, if there are any questions on some of the features that I mentioned, or any feature specific questions, please do throw them out there. In terms of what I had, okay, so what we went through on one of the first slides was the main, what I define as the core components of Office 365 is always going to be Exchange Online, which I know is in the bottom right, but should be on the top left. Exchange Online is always going to be the most popular feature of Office 365. So this is going to host your mail. Second to that, I would probably say Office 365 Pro Plus. So Pro Plus does give you a good way of licensing Office on client devices. So it does give you the entitlements for the full fat version. SharePoint Online is definitely growing in popularity, especially for basic internal intranets and file storage. And finally, Skype for Business, although I probably wouldn't have pegged Skype for Business at the bottom, maybe SharePoint at the bottom. Skype for Business definitely increasing in popularity, especially for the IM and VoIP, a lot now more so for the PSTN conferencing. Also got another question through. Do you need Windows 10 Enterprise to apply EM+S, or will it work with Windows 10 Pro? That would highly depend on the features. I think there's only the features that you want to apply. Most features will work with Professional, because the EM+S features are more cloud-based features. I think the only variance would be you wouldn't get as many options for configuring the Professional devices on group policy and Intune. I think that would be the only difference if you was to use EM+S with Windows 10 Pro. Hopefully that makes sense. So it's only the client management piece that's affected, because in Windows 10 Enterprise, there is a feature, I don't think it was on my last slide. In fact, I'll double check that in a minute, or so I'll lose myself. There is a feature that it says something like advanced management and group policy objects are included with Windows 10 Enterprise. So you would miss out on a couple of management objects within Intune. I'm just trying to think of everything else. I think that would be it. I'll double check that for you, but that would be my initial thoughts on it. So all aware of the Office 365 parts. In terms of the E3 and E5 differences, I know that we covered this towards the beginning. That was mainly the Power BI and Skype for Business piece, or the PSTN conferencing. But just to kind of elaborate on the additional tenancy-wide features that you would get on E5 is you would get things like ATP, so advanced threat protection on Office 365. So this is things like your URL scanning and your attachment scanning, and your sandboxing of certain emails that may be malicious. You also get things like threat intelligence, so shows you tenancy-wide, what's happening, what threats are out there, what actors are potentially trying to breach through to your tenant. You also get things like advanced e-discovery. So this is more for Exchange and creating much more advanced queries and much more quicker and smarter queries when launching an e-discovery on someone's mailbox. If I'm right in saying, I really should validate this, because I had this question the other day as well, so I'm still waiting for a response. I think that the advanced e-discovery doesn't just cover email, it also covers things in your OneDrive and in your SharePoint. And OneDrive, the OneDrive for Business, the SharePoint, and Exchange Online. That's what the advanced e-discovery can also cover. Got another question through. Does Cloud PBX remove the need to have a third-party SIP trunk provider? In effect, it would. If you moved fully to the Cloud PBX, you would not need you wouldn't need the trunk provider at that point. All depends on which telephony system you have, of course, and what other functionality you have with the telephony system. But in terms of having your users being able to call out on landlines and mobile numbers, it will definitely do that. Some of the conferencing features, they are still quite new. So conferencing bridges, I believe, are still coming into effect. There was one other feature that I know that other trunk providers can provide. I will double check that, but in effect, yeah, it will do at least 80% of it. It just depends if you have things like Cisco or ShoreTel, they're going to have some advanced functionality in terms of switchboarding and all of that good stuff. That's because they would still have that functionality. So from here we can see the the Office 365 differences between E3 and E5. As I mentioned, we covered the analytics piece and the VoIP piece on the previous bit. So the next part is going more into security. But before I do, I have one more question to answer, and also we'll probably just nip out for a 5-minute break. I'm looking at the time. Can't believe I've already been speaking for this long. So we'll definitely have a break, let you guys get a coffee, answer some emails and all of that good stuff. The next question is what is the future of Skype for Business? Is it being phased out and replaced by Teams? That is the million-dollar question. No one knows. I don't think Skype for Business will be phased out. If it is to be phased out, it will be a number of years before they do. I think the adoption rate on Teams is a bit of a hit and miss. Some people love Teams, some people just can't get on with it. So I think people are definitely going to want to keep Skype for Business around for at least another 3 years, maybe 5 years. I think they'll definitely run side by side for quite a while. Longer term, possibly it will be phased out, but I mean, it's going to contain the same functionality anyway. There are a lot of rumors that Skype will be phased out, but they are just rumors. At this point, I choose not to believe that. But if we do hear anything, I'm guessing it will probably be posted on our website, and we'll you know, it will definitely be big news, or you guys will probably know about it before us because it will be pasted all over LinkedIn. I can imagine that kind of news. But if I do hear anything, it will probably be on my website also. I need those likes. So yeah, so let's break for, I was going to say 5 minutes. Let's just all come back at 11:30. So that gives you roughly 8 minutes. You know, I obviously can't check if you guys are punctual or not. So I'll be kicking back off at 11:30. So speak to you guys in a bit. Hey guys, hopefully you grab some coffee or some tea, some water, and you're all back. No way of really me checking. So I mean, I suppose if you wanna put something in the IM, then that's fine. But I'm going to assume that everyone's back, everyone's listening, and not everyone has ran off to grab an early lunch or they're just fed up with my voice. Anyway, wanted to do a quick kind of security overview before we actually go into the EM+S suite, and I know that I've covered about 80% of the EM+S suite anyway. It was just to highlight some of the details in there, but I have more of a security background, so this is definitely where I play more nicely in. So in terms of security objectives that all of our customers and all of our businesses have, a lot of our objectives are going to align to this, and the main goal is always going to be for making it as difficult as possible for attackers to gain access to our network and to steal our stuff. As I mentioned earlier, with things like Windows Defender and with things like any type of antivirus, it's impossible to keep everything out, right? One way or another, someone is going to find a way in, or there's always going to be some kind of exploit that we've missed to actually get inside. So it's not about making it impossible for a hacker to get in, but making it as difficult as possible. Because as bad as it sounds, and thankfully there's no salespeople around me, but I normally compare hackers to salespeople, right? They will always do the minimum amount possible for the most amount of gain. I suppose administrators can be accounted to this as well, because administrators script stuff a lot and they do a lot of stuff that's repeatable, but hackers are exactly the same. They will look for the low-hanging fruit. They will look for the businesses that have left a RDP or an SSH port open, because this is an easy way in for them. They will look for the users that have weak passwords. They will look for the weakest link. Right? If they come across a business that has high fortresses, amazing firewalls, MFA on all of their users, they're going to be quite deterred. Now, unless your company is a high-profile company that everyone knows and everyone wants to get into, I don't know, like the BBC or TFL, or someone really, really popular like that. That's when more targeted attacks are going to happen, and that's when people are going to be persistent to happen. But for most general businesses, hackers are almost passing by. They're just running scripts looking for open ports. If they detect one on their IP range, then they're going to try and intrude into your network. So we just want to make it as difficult as possible. Having said that, obviously there is still that chance that someone might come in. So when someone actually does come in, when there is a breach, we want to be able to contain, isolate, and remediate those breaches as quickly as possible. From all of that security that we want to provide, we also want to provide a reliable and consistent service for our users. We also don't want to hinder their productivity. It is very tempting for an IT administrator to lock down people's machines with GPO, to set an insane password policy for our users. And that's great and everything. We might tick a couple of boxes, but our users are probably going to be unable to work, or they're going to try and circumvent the processes that you've put into place, or circumvent the IT GPO policies that you've put in place. An example of this is if you increase the password complexity of a user's of a user account, they're more likely to write it on a sticky note. So you're not actually increasing security, it's detrimental to it. So we want to be able to secure our users, but we don't want to hinder their productivity. We don't want to hinder the business's productivity, and this is one of our key goals that we always want to aim towards. We also want to gain visibility into our estate. IT infrastructure is it's not simple anymore. It's very complex. There's nothing left in our perimeter. Everyone's a remote worker. Everyone can work from home. We have contractors. We have external individuals. We have consumers and customers that we need to cater for. Our environment is massive. It's scarily massive. There's most of the time a lack of control and visibility there. We have no idea what's going on and what's within that noise. So we want to gain visibility into our estate. Finally, while this is more of a nice to have kind of objective, definitely an easy management of solutions, right? We want to aim for a single pane of glass. It's not always possible. We're not going to have everything in one pane of glass, but we don't want to have to manage 20 different portals and 13 different products when we're looking at security. Obviously, the next security challenge to that is the trade-offs, right? There's we definitely want high security. We definitely want our security to actually work, but then we've got to consider the cost and complexity. We also need to consider the management and the deployment. So there is a lot of different things to consider when we're going down the security route, or when we're considering security products in general. And most of the time, it will come down to these three things. The challenge is further made more difficult from the fact that our security perimeter has changed. Way back when, we used to have our on-premise systems. It used to be within our LAN, within our network. People come into work, they do their work, they go home at 5:30, they have a couple of beers, come back in the next day, back to work, right? And this all happened within our network. Nowadays, this is not the case. As what we've seen happen is everyone works from home, everyone consumes cloud services. There's mobile workers. Most of the time, I'm out of the office. I'm either visiting clients or sometimes I'm working from home because I want some peace and quiet, right? This is outside our perimeter now. So it's like, am I a security risk? I mean, I'm the security guy, but yeah, it could be a risky thing me working outside. I also have my personal OneDrive. What happens if I accidentally put a bytes document in there? Then obviously that's going to be an issue. So all of this is, the perimeter of everything has vastly changed over the years. And this is where that visibility element comes in. We want visibility of, as much of this as possible, because a lot of it, because it's outside of our perimeter, we have lost the control, we have lost the visibility. So how do we get that balance? How do we enable productivity without compromising security? Most of the time, it is a balance, and all other times it's actually a conflict between two teams. IT operations and IT security are normally in a constant battle of, the business needs X, Y, and Z, the productivity side, and the security guys are saying, no way, we can't do that, it's too risky. We have to have some kind of balance. And in order to achieve that balance, we want to look at solutions that incorporate that balance, right? Not so much products, but more solutions. When we look at something, we want to ensure that, yes, this is definitely giving us really good security. It's mitigating the risk of a breach, but our users can work normally. We want it to be as transparent or as friendly to users as possible. And I normally relate this to something like multi-factor authentication. Right? A lot of businesses that are putting multi-factor authentication in for their users think that, oh my God, users are going to panic. They're not going to know to enter a code on their computer. But little do they know, well, Facebook has implemented MFA. They've had that for a while. So has Gmail, so has Hotmail, and a number of users are already using MFA. They understand MFA. They understand that if they get a text, they need to enter it in. So it should be easier, right? We're putting more security controls in, but we're not hindering productivity. I mean, I suppose, save for the 15 seconds it takes to put a code in, but users are already used to this, so maybe it's not as scary as we think. Bit of a tangent there, apologies. Another issue and another challenge that we're seeing, and this is where my workshops kind of come into play, which I'll touch on towards the end. But the market is getting segmented and confusing. Now, I don't want to say too much because I do have a marketing person in the room with me, but sometimes marketing does us no favors with all the data sheets that are being sent out, and certain products, they are overemphasized, right? It says that it can do more than what it realistically can. We normally look at a product, it looks really good on the front, it's sold to us really well, fantastic marketing. And when it gets down to actually, does this hit my requirements? That's where the disappointment starts coming in. Now, that's not anyone's fault. Trying to recover myself here, digging a little bit of a hole. But what I'm saying is we need to be absolutely sure what we're purchasing fits the requirements. And, Microsoft, while they are an awesome company, they also have a really good marketing team, right? So, we need to evaluate, does this solution fit? Is it going to hit the security? And likewise, loads of other places have really good marketing teams and really good sales teams, and they can make, something that's mediocre look really good. So we need to ensure, sorry, I'm probably getting away from myself here. We need to ensure that solution definitely fits. Some more challenges. I know, a very negative set of slides, but in terms of public cloud challenges that I've come across with a lot of different customers in relation to security is the confusion about who is responsible for security in the cloud. And this normally comes with some kind of notion, concept, or some kind of thought that if I put my stuff in the cloud, I don't have to worry about the security anymore. And that is quite far from the truth. Now, don't get me wrong, cloud services will take an element of that management and responsibility and manage that for you, but there are still certain, like, you know, everything that you've put into your cloud service, that's still your responsibility. And what I mean by this from one perspective is, if you put your information in Office 365, but you don't secure your Office 365, you have a weak password and your global admin, you know, gets compromised and someone steals all your data and leaks it, it's not Microsoft that has to declare that to the Information Commissioner Officer for GDPR. It's you, your business. You are still responsible for that data, which means you are still responsible for the security that you've put on that data. So both the cloud provider and the consumer needs to know what they're responsible for and put steps in place. In terms of the other points, I've pretty much covered them, but a lot of customers normally are unaware of cloud security best practices. It's not as bad now as it used to be, but in effect, you know, like cloud services makes a lot of things easier, makes a lot of things more productive. It's so easy to create a virtual machine in Azure for those of you using Azure, and likewise AWS, very easy to spin up a virtual machine. However, while it takes 5 minutes to spin up a virtual machine and access it, it's also very unsecure. That virtual machine is going to have a public IP address automatically assigned to it. It's going to have either RDP or SSH open to it. These are not best practices of the cloud, because most of the time you would have a VPN that goes into something like Azure and AWS and then access your machine. But we are so used to consuming things very quickly that we forget about the security. So cloud security best practices definitely need to be looked at, especially within the plan and then migration stage of going to the cloud. There is also a lot of confusion around the limitations of native cloud security. So, and this kind of ties in with point one, cloud security vendors definitely going to give you a good element of security, but then you need to understand that what tools they provide, and does that provide you enough security? The biggest argument at the minute is the Azure NSGs, network security groups, versus an actual firewall. You know, they're kind of both marketed as a firewall, but an NSG is more like a stateless firewall, while a virtual firewall is more of a stateful firewall. So it can do that deep packet inspection. It can identify malicious packets of data. So it's going that layer after. I mean, you wouldn't have a stateless firewall within your infrastructure no more. It's relatively unheard of. You know, source and destination IP addresses change all the time. So obviously a stateful firewall is something that you would have in your perimeter. Why would you not have that in the cloud? So it's looking at those different areas. So to make a couple of points off the back of that, cloud services are not designed to directly replicate your old IT. Some of the frameworks should definitely be used, having a firewall, making sure stuff is secured. Absolutely, best practices should still be adhered to. But most cloud services, they're not a like for like of what you have in your infrastructure. They are going to be different. So make sure you understand those change. Cloud services, and this middle one is a good thing and also a bad thing. It's an issue for some, it's a joy for others, but cloud services are actually designed to promote collaboration and sharing. OneDrive is a common example, very easy to share data from one person to another using a link. Dropbox is the same. We can also look at something like AWS, where I remember their S3 buckets by default were publicly accessible. A little bit of a no-no. That sounds like a bit of a data breach by Amazon, but Amazon clearly stated that it's publicly accessible by default, and that's because they want you to share your data with other services, with other users, and this is the cloud culture now. It's being able to share stuff very easily. Security is also influenced much by cultural changes. So, getting your users on board, getting that adoption on board is going to be key to implementing security. Real quick on the shared responsibility model. Just before I kick off on the shared responsibility model, sorry, my brain completely went dead there. Just going to ask a quick poll of who's actually heard of the shared responsibility model. Oh, there's no poll. Oh, this is just an open question. Throw it in the questions and answer section. If you've heard of it, say yes. If not, say no. If everyone says yes, then I can obviously probably skip by this slide. But yeah, I'll give you guys a minute to finish that. As I said, gonna just grab a sip of water. Okay, so looks like a number of you responded very quickly. In fact, you guys are hot on the keyboards. So it looks like a fair number of no's in the session. So just going to run through this real quick because it can get in detailed very quickly. But hold on 2 ticks. Let me just move this out the way. In fact, I'll from your screen. Sorry about that slight technical issue. The webinar piece was completely in front of my screen, so I couldn't see any slides. So the shared responsibility model is quite a straightforward thing to understand. It's basically saying that a cloud provider is responsible for a certain part of the security of the cloud service, whereas the customer is responsible for another. The way that I normally break this down is the cloud provider is responsible for the security of the actual cloud, of their actual environment, of their actual hardware and underlying storage systems, whereas the customer, the consumer, us, we are responsible for what we actually put in the cloud, into our tenancy. So this is going back to that example that I said that, you know, if your tenant in Office 365 was breached, you know, whose in quotes fault would that actually be? Well, okay, it depends on how you were breached. I mean, if it was, you know, due to lack of strong password or MFA or anything like that, then it could be you. But it's more of the fact of, you know, who does this responsibility lie with? Who is responsible for implemented security to mitigate that in the future? So as we can see on this slide, I've done this more for the IaaS, the infrastructure as a service piece for AWS and Azure. But in terms of the cloud provider, they are responsible for securing things like the underlying networking and devices. So this is more of the physical access. They're responsible for things like the hypervisor layer. They're also responsible for the actual site security. So this could be everything from, you know, a guard at the gate to an armed guard in the data center. Right? This is to stop people rioting next to the data center, for example. But the cloud provider is responsible for that. They are responsible for the security of their actual cloud environment. Likewise, as the customer, we are responsible for things like access control and identity. We need to ensure that we are putting the correct controls for our identity mechanism in place, so only the correct people can access our tenancy. And if an unauthorized access does come in, that we can audit this. This is still our responsibility to do. And this also extends to things like security groups. And likewise, if someone does breach in, is our data actually encrypted? Now, fair enough, it is an arguable point that the underlying storage systems, so I think it's the block storage on the data center and hardware level would be encrypted, but it's also knowing that, okay, if someone access our tenancy and this underlying encryption was removed, they can still read our data from the tenancy level. So how do we encrypt our data an extra layer further? Because that data that we've put into our cloud is still our responsibility. Hopefully this makes sense. I mean, I am conscious of time and there's a number of things to still run through, so I'm not going to go into too much detail on the shared responsibility model, as I could probably talk about this for another hour. Probably worth doing a separate webinar / roundtable just on the shared responsibility model. So let me hit next. So EM+S, just to quickly run through this with, and in fact, before I finalize all the stuff on EM+S, just going to ask a quick poll. I think we've definitely got a poll for this one. How many of you guys are using EM+S, or I still call it EMS because that's what it used to be. How many of you guys utilize EM+S, and to what extent? So results are in. A number of you are asking, what is EM+S? I'm pretty sure I covered it earlier on in this session. I'm guessing this is because there wasn't an option that says I am not using EM+S, so it's probably a little bit of a typo on our part. So I'm going to assume that you guys have a bit more familiarity with EM+S from the previous slides, and this is just we are not using it unless someone wants to tell me different. I'll quickly finalize on the stuff on EM+S. So obviously on the previous slides, we covered the E3 and E5 differences. This is a kind of different way of illustrating it. So on the E3 level, we're going to get our P1 features. This is your single sign-on, your MFA, your conditional access. We're then going to get access to Intune. So this is the MDM, the MAM, the configuration and policies on devices, the Windows update, pretty much almost like WSUS from the cloud. We then have the Azure Information Protection. So this is actually classifying documents, adding labels to them and adding policies to them. It adds a layer of encryption to the actual documents. So when they're sent out of your organization, the people that are reading or receiving those documents would need to authenticate back into your Azure Active Directory in order to read the documents. This then gives you the control to actually revoke access to a specific file. So very good for protecting sensitive data. And lastly, we touched on the Advanced Threat Analytics, so the ATA side. This was the on-premise server that does a port mirror of all your authentication requests and looks at any suspicious logins, looks at things like pass the hash, golden ticket, overpass the hash, and all of that good stuff. The E5 flavor of licensing obviously contains the E3 components plus more, which we ran through. This contains the privileged identity piece and the identity analytics. The P2 has more of a machine learning and automation element to the classification. And then we have the MCAS part, which is very similar to a CASB and gives you that visibility. Very overcomplicated slide, so I don't want to muddy the water, and I'm just going to hit next on that one. So I think in the interests of time, most of the areas of security would align to things like the EM+S suite. However, I'm just going to quickly skip by this. Obviously, just touching on some of the points that passwords are flawed. This was not in our office, by the way. I genuinely found these on the internet. So, but we've all seen these around our offices at some point in our lives. Passwords are flawed. And password management is exhausting. Changing a user's password every 30 days, making it overly complex, will lead exactly to this. So, make it as easy as possible for the users, or use something like MFA, which is normally quite effective. So if I just skip out of here, I'm going to jump towards the end. So I suppose around here. So when I look at security, I try and look at it from 5 different areas, right? Users, devices, networking, services or applications, and then back-end data. Arguably, there is a layer across this, almost like a management layer, a cybersecurity layer, and this would be for things like vulnerability management, penetration testing, compliance in governments, using things like SIEM tools to monitor all of these areas. But effectively, if we concentrate concentrate on these 5 layers, it does help us to build a more layered security solution. And most of the time, there are different vendors that play in those areas that help us build that layered solution. Now, these are just some vendors that we work with, some vendors that I've used, and this is just their alignment into the field. You know, Microsoft have a good play across pretty much all of them. I haven't really included Microsoft within networking because while they do the ATA and CAS side, they don't really do a full-blown firewall and IPS and IDS type solution. So, you know, it's almost like they're half in on that. But, you know, when you consider the likes of Sophos and Barracuda, they do a full-blown firewall. So, you know, maybe that would need to be layered in. But as you can see, there's multiple different lenders that play in the field. Some cover more areas than others, like Sophos and Symantec. They have a really good coverage. But likewise, you've got your Oktas, which focus solely on user identity and reducing that complexity. And you also have things like CrowdStrike, which, you know, they focus on just endpoint devices. They do it really well, but that's all they focus on. So when looking at different vendors to build your solution for your business, it's always worthwhile considering, you know, do I want someone that can cover a lot of different features to a good level, but you know, might not hit all my requirements, or am I going to go with, you know, a point solution? It's only going to be for you know, one area of security, but they're going to do it really good. And this is in effect where something like the workshop that I mentioned earlier. Oh, sorry, I should actually full screen this. Apologies, I've now lost my mouse. There we go. I'll full screen this. Sorry. We're using something like the cloud security workshop that I mentioned. We can actually go through all of this. We can go through loads of different vendors and be able to align a solution accordingly. To summarize today's session, you know, we definitely want to assess all areas of security. As mentioned in the in this slide, there are different areas, so we definitely want to consider them. We also want to look at multi-vendor versus single vendor. There is, in my experience, no such thing as a silver bullet. Every single company is going to use Microsoft, but I've never seen one company that just uses Microsoft, especially for security. So we always want to do a layered approach, or at least consider our options, right? We want to ensure that any gaps in security are understood. We want to perform a risk assessment. I know it sounds boring, but definitely necessary. And we want to see what to action. Are we going to accept the risk? Are we going to mitigate the risk? Are we going to put things in place to completely reduce or eliminate the risk? We want to understand these, and security is all around the mitigation of risk. As a kind of final note, in order to get a really good stance on your security, pen testing is always the way forward, right? Pen testing and vulnerability assessments, like a full-blown consultant on-site vulnerability assessment, always the way to go. It gives you a point in time. This is what our security looks like. If someone was attacking us specifically, this is what would happen. This is what we need to repair. This is what we need to work towards. I'd always recommend pen testing. I definitely think it's a good exercise. And you know, Bytes can also support you with that. We are, you know, we do have a separate division of Bytes, which is a cyber consulting division. So, you know, please do reach out to us if a pen testing or vulnerability assessment or any kind of compliance assessment is required. So in terms of next steps, I have, for those of you that have hung on to the end, you've soldiered on. These are the workshops that I mentioned. So we have the Office 365 workshop, and we also have the M365 workshops. So these are hosted and delivered on a one-to-one basis with our cloud solutions architects. Really good bunch of guys, go into really deep detail on Office 365 and the Microsoft 365 features and how these align to your business. So if you are looking at implementing something like EM+S, or looking at options around M365, please do engage us. You know, they can come on site. I'm pretty sure it's free. Well, yeah, it is free of charge. Although I may have shot myself in the foot on that one. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's free of charge. Can't really charge for pre-sales. So yeah. we can definitely get some of our guys on site. Active session. It looks to understand your requirements and align us solutions accordingly. Just like on that other graphic, it does focus on user network. The main purpose is to identify any gaps within your security at a relatively high level. Of course, there's no intrusive testing or anything like that, but it's just a talk through consultatively around your requirements and how Bytes can support you. What do you guys get out of it? 2-hour one-on-one session, some recommendations on some current and future investments. But probably one of the most valuable things that we've seen is the output report that you get out the back of it. So the output report will give you recommendations and information that we spoke about during the session, and pretty much paint a picture of how you can move that forward, what next steps should be made. In terms of how to engage, the short version is I normally do a scoping call beforehand, understand your expectations, see if there's anything specific that you want, and obviously understand that you're not halfway across the country. Shot myself in the foot with logistics before, of course. But in order to engage, please contact me directly or your account manager, or I think it's tellmemore@bytes.co.uk. So just please feel free to reach out to us that way. I don't know why the CSP element is here. I think I was just going to finalize on if you do need anything. We do have a good CSP team here, so please do ask us for any advice. And yeah, to close off, I think there's a feedback form that's going to be sent around. So we'd encourage you to complete that. Feedback is always good. I think there's a couple of questions. Some is, will the slide deck be made available? I'm pretty sure that there's nothing confidential in here. So yep, you can definitely have the slide deck as long as you credit me in if you use it anywhere else, right? But yeah, we can make that available. So yeah, complete feedback forms, slide deck will be sent out. If you do have any questions after this session while you're grabbing some lunch and all that good stuff, please send them off to me. Or likewise, if you have any questions now, then please do feel free to ask them. Other from that, thank you for those who participated today. Thank you guys for all the questions. It was really good. I know it was a bit more webinar-y than we kind of thought, but thank you guys for hanging in there. Thank you guys for partaking. I hope that you found it useful. As I said, when you give feedback, if there's anything you think that I should do differently, please do say it. I'm not going to take it personally, or at least not that much. So yeah, I'll hang on for a couple of minutes just in case there's other questions. But for those of you that are starving and almost about to fade away, I suppose we can all grab lunch now. Awesome. Well, guys, it doesn't seem like there's any more questions for today. I'm getting some good feedback, so thank you guys for that. Oh, I do have one question that's come through. Do you offer any support options around options for Skype? I think our cloud support team under CSP has a Premier support contract, so I know that we do some kind of layered support around that. I don't think it would be specific for Skype, but more for escalating any queries that you may have with Microsoft. However, what I can do, I'm not going to mention your name with everyone here, but if you want, we can take this offline, and I can give one of the guys your details, or find the account manager that you align to your details, and he can give you a call back in terms of those options that we can provide and to what level we can. Because on one side, we do have a Premier support contract that you will be umbrellaed with if you come down the CSP route, but if you require more hands-on, I need an engineer straight away kind of support, support, then we do work with a number of partners that provide different levels of support. We could obviously look at options within that. I know there are various support options. I haven't got involved too much on the support side of things, but we can definitely, follow that up with yourself. In terms of everyone else, thank you for the good feedback. I hope you enjoy your day, and we'll hopefully see you on the next webinar. So yeah, thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch.